Hi, everybody. So we are the Wattpad4, as you guys know, and today we have New York Times bestselling author Aprilynne Pike with us. Hello.
Hi, April.
Hello.
She is the author of the fabulous book Glitter, which just came out and which we have all just finished reading, which was fantastic.
Except for I'm a little bit mad at how you ended it.
We've got a little bit of a bone to pick collectively. So there might be some yelling later in the chat because it was quite the cliffhanger.
Please tell us.
I don't know what you're talking about. It ends up so nicely and happily, and I don't know how I could ever go on to a sequel. It ends so well.
If that is happy, I feel sorry for the people in your life.
So when do we get to see book 2? This is like partly for the chat, but also really I want to know personally when I get book 2.
Next year, this time. It is drafted. I'm working on edits on it, so it is done enough that I can guarantee it will be out at this time next year.
Awesome.
Do you need any beta readers?
I might.
Yeah, we're volunteering if you need anyone, because I need a resolution.
Yeah, it is only the 2 books, so I promise that the resolution does come in the next book.
Awesome. Yes, if you haven't read Glitter, it's a beautiful, gorgeous cover. I'm just going to steal this so that you can see a little closer up just how gorgeous the actual colors are. I don't know if you can see Rebecca's lips over here, but she tried to do the glittery look, and I've got my little pot of glitter like in the books. I imagine them to be much more fancy than that, but so let's start with question 1. Oh no.
Oh, we got to tweet our live link.
Yes.
I don't know how to do it.
Well, it should be up already for people if they follow the link that we previously tweeted. Okay, there we go. We're not causing a total disaster. So our first question for you, Aprilynne, is tell us a little bit about yourself and how and why you started writing.
Well, I am Aprilynne, and I live in Phoenix, which is where I was raised because I love the desert. And I have 4 kids and a husband who's never, ever, ever going to stop going to school. He's working on his 3rd graduate degree now, and he loves it, and I'm happy to never have homework again. I actually do have a degree in creative writing, but I didn't start college intending to do that. I actually started college in pre-med. Which is the total opposite of writing fiction, and found out that I wasn't actually as good at science as I thought. And I changed my major to creative writing. And a couple of years later, I started my first book, and I learned the secret that every author knows, and that's that writing is hard. And so I quit for a while, and it took me a couple more false starts before I finished my first book. And then after I finished my first book, I wrote a couple more, and then I got an agent, and then I still had to write another one before I sold the book, and that was Wings, and that was 9 books ago.
Wow.
Wow.
Amazing. Do you have a favorite of those 9 books?
Until this month, I would have said it was Life After Theft, which has this really kind of sarcastic, dry humor in it, which is totally my sense of humor. I apparently have the sense of humor of a 16-year-old boy. But I really, really like Glitter. I'm having so much fun with Glitter. It's been so fun to write an anti-heroine. Very free. She doesn't have to make the right choices.
No, she rarely does that, actually.
She does.
Which makes it a very infuriating and interesting read at the same time.
Yeah, very.
She has some judgment issues.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's partly what I think we really liked and why there was that comparison to Breaking Bad a little bit, which I found so interesting because there's, in so many ways, it's not Breaking Bad. It's like this elegant, royal kind of scene and setting, and everyone's very formal and beautiful. And then you just got this character who's spiraling out of control. So the contrast was really, really compelling. So Yeah.
It's just like Breaking Bad, except completely not.
Yeah.
It's the illicit substances part of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have another question here for you. What inspired glitter? Because it's such a weird mashup of genre that I don't even know where your brain got that.
Me either. No, it did actually start with Breaking Bad. I really enjoyed the series, AMC series. But I felt like the beginning of series 5 was kind of a low point. To be fair, it came back at the end of season 5 and had like one of the most phenomenal series endings ever. But the beginning of season 5 was a little mushy to me. I felt like the plots were getting a little weird, and like the characters were acting in ways that 4 seasons of character development wouldn't lead them to act. And in kind of the egocentric way that I think a lot of authors have, I just feel like I could have done it better. And I was like, but I don't want to write this. I'd really rather write a book about girls in pretty dresses. And my husband goes, well, you should do that. And I'm like, how in the world would I combine those two? And that's how glitter came to be.
Awesome. Can you tell us a little bit, this is a little off script, but we were both really very intrigued by the corset, the steel boning,
binding,
it's almost like a form of like how other cultures have like foot binding, and
I have one.
He's reaching for something. Oh, very cool. Oh, wow. Because like the character almost goes to the extreme.
It's like self-harm, but
almost. Yeah.
It's actually like self-medication, but it does, if you're not careful with it, does start to verge into that. I did a lot of research into a bunch of things, but corsets were one of them. And I found out that in the like corset culture, which there is one, there are a lot of people who suffer from anxiety who say that being able to wear a corset every day makes them feel more in control of their life, and that actually is as helpful to some of them as even things like therapy and medication, that really helps them to feel secure. And so I thought, well, what if you have a teenager who feels that way, but then takes it too far? You know, their life is spiraling out of control and they do start going to extremes. And instead of just using something that helps them feel better, they take it too far and she starts going down too quickly. Because like if corsets are used correctly and you go down carefully, they don't actually hurt you. But if you go too fast, you can damage yourself. And that's essentially what she does. She uses this coping method and she takes it too far. But it is something that some people actually like for helping with their anxiety.
I really like the symbolism of it in the book, like how it kind of reflects, you know, what she's doing, you know, how she's feeling on the inside by how she treats her corset.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the fact that kind of, you know, everything is falling apart around her and because of her, but she feels like she can retain control by continuing to cinch her corset and like literally holding herself together with it.
Yeah. So many of the issues that teens face today, that they do turn to unhealthy coping mechanisms, it's almost always not about the mechanism itself, but about that trying to grasp for control in their own life. So I felt like it really reflected a lot of the things that teens do to try to be in control of their own life.
Mm-hmm.
That's super interesting. I have a question. What is your writing process like? Very curious to know that.
I tend to be a really linear writer, which means that I plan out what I want to do in advance, and then I start with chapter 1 and I write to chapter the end. And I discovered that this is the best way for me because I really, really like to write endings. And so I hold them out like a carrot on a stick to help me get through the, 4, 6, sometimes 12 months that it takes to get to the ending. I'm just like, okay, right through this part because I want to get to the end. Right through this part because I want to get to the end. And of course, now the story that I'm working on right now, I'm writing in bits and pieces, and I'm like, duh! So I had a process until a few months ago, and now I'm not really following it. But for like, let's see, at least 8 of the 9 books, that's how I've written them. It's just chapter 1 to chapter the end, holding the ending out like a treat for myself.
It's good to know that even New York Times bestselling authors can randomly switch up their process. So I think that's something that especially newbies like kind of flip-flop from one thing to another and figure it out as they go. So I guess it's different for some certain books, say.
It really is. And, you know, if you're on a tight deadline, you go with your tried and true. You go with what works. But at this point, after I get edits in for the second glitter book, I'm not under contract. And so I don't feel like I have to get a book out. So I am kind of playing with it. I am trying something new. And it's been fun. And I'm not sure how it's going to work out, but here's hoping.
Well, now you got our curiosity spiked for that book.
Yeah.
So you've written 9 books, or is that 9 after you were agented?
Oh, let's see. Wings has 4, Earthbound has 3, Sleep No More, Life After Theft. Oh, this is my 10th. Glitter is my 10th.
Amazing.
You lose track.
You do. Yeah, I have to count them on fingers. I can tell you I have 4 kids, but I can't tell you how many books I have.
I think the whole
the other way around.
So yeah, exactly. It's probably good to know how many kids you have, and rather than books. It's a little more acceptable, yeah.
So 10 books, New York Times bestseller. What is your biggest achievement?
Honestly, I don't think that it has anything to do with books. My kids are my biggest achievement, and I'm that piano mom that is like my children are going to play piano. They start as soon as they can read, and they practice at least 6 days a week.
Wow.
So all 4 of my kids play piano, and the oldest ones have been playing for 7 years, and they're really, really good. And I really love that I'm raising these kids who play piano, and I'm really excited about that. So I also have been married for almost 15 years. Next month, a few more weeks, I've been married for 15 years, and I'm really proud of my marriage. And in that way, I'm really, really proud of my books, but I think that any job in life really kind of exists so that you can have your family and live your life with them. So my family, sappy as that may be, my family is my greatest achievement.
That's awesome. Do you let them read your books? Are the kids going to be allowed to read glitter?
They can. I actually am big on not telling my kids what they can't read. And I have learned that kids are really, really good at self-censoring. They'll put down books that are too dark or too old or too fluffy or too deep or whatever. So that being said, I have one daughter who is 13. She's my oldest. And she has read the first 2 Wings books. And she read about half of Life After Theft until it started to kind of get deep and dark. And she was like, I'm done with this, because she was like 11. But when she was about 10, she read the first 2 or 3 chapters of Wings and told me it was boring. So that was awesome.
Ouch.
But I don't think any of my other kids have read any of my books. They're still pretty young.
Fair enough. So we have lots of time still. We only had roughly 5 questions. So we're going to fill in the middle here sort of with a kind of random ones that we've been wondering as well. And so one of my questions here, I'm very curious to know a little bit of your publishing journey, if you would share with us about agents and publications and that type of thing, and how you sort of came to it that way.
Absolutely. I have a very typical author's journey, and it's not the one that most people think of as typical, because most people know the ones that get publicized, which is somebody, goes out and writes a book and gets an agent and huge sale, and it becomes a big worldwide bestseller. And I think most of the time, the public tends to think that that's the actual author's journey, and Hollywood just confuses everything. But actually, for me, I wrote a book, and I didn't edit that book. I thought I did. I thought editing meant running spell check. It's not. So I wrote the book, and I queried, and it took me 100 rejections before I finally got the idea that it wasn't them. It was me, that there was something wrong with my book. And so during the summer, I wrote another book, but I also learned how to edit. And so I spent several months ripping this first book apart and putting it back together, and then ripping it apart again. And it finally was something that was actually sellable and decent, because I had edited, because first drafts are always awful. Even now, my first drafts are terrible. And I sent it out, and I had like immediately 4 or 5 agents ask for the full. And during that time, one of the first agents that I had ever sent it to emails me and is like, hey, my assistant found your manuscript on the floor in the corner of my office. Like literally on the floor. I'm like, thank you. And she's like, is it still available? And so I realized she's got that terrible, terrible first draft. And I was like, it is, but can I send you a new draft? So like 10 months after she requested the full, I sent her a new full, and I ended up signing with her. And so she took that book and she sent it out to publishers, and nobody wanted it. And so it got just roundly rejected all over New York. And she was a really high-powered agent. So like it had the best chance that any book has ever gotten, and still nobody wanted it. So even after I got an agent, I still had to write another book. And so Wings was the second book that I wrote for her. And then she was able to sell that one to HarperCollins, and they picked up the series, and it did really well. But I mean, literally, I wrote 3 books before I got an agent, and I still wrote another book after that before I had one I could sell. And that's very, very normal. It's normal to write multiple books. And I always like to make sure people know that, because they feel like a failure if they wrote a book and they couldn't get an agent, or they wrote a book and they got an agent, but they couldn't get a publisher. But it's actually really, really normal. And a lot of authors call them trunk novels, and I prefer to call them practice novels, because you always gain something by writing a book, even if that something isn't a publishing contract, even if it's just learning things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great answer. Thanks so much for letting us know kind of a little bit about your journey. I always find that very interesting, and I know that a lot of our viewers are also aspiring writers, so it's great. Success stories. Also, just a quick, update. And if you weren't here for the first bit of the chat and you're watching now, or just tuning in, we're tweeting our costumes over on Twitter under the hashtag Wattpad4. And if you want to tag Aprilynne as well, she'll be going through and handing out a prize at the end for the best costume. Mm-hmm. You guys all look great. We're already seeing some very cool costumes. I think there's a Professor McGonagall in there, which I kind of squeed over a little bit, which is really I don't know if you can tell, Rebecca's a gnome. She's got the hat. Don't hit me with your hat, please. Rebecca, so cute. She is cute. She's even got the vest and little boots that curl over the top, like totally gnome. And you can't tell, but I have like kind of bluish hair. I'm supposed to be Miss Peregrine. I have the gas mask and everything, but I didn't want to scare our viewers, so I don't have that on right now. Plus, I can't really see in it, so that's for later. And Leah, tell us a bit about your costume.
I apparently didn't care about scaring anybody, and I am a mermaid that has been captured with a fish hook.
I don't know if you can see properly, but she literally has gross.
It was fun.
We got some sparkles hidden on you, Aprilynne. You want to show us that glitter?
Yes, if I can.
We all have glitter.
Very, very dark eyeshadow and glitter.
I can see it around your eyes.
Around my eyes, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, Rebecca tried to glitter her lips, and then I tried to as well, but mine didn't show up. So.
I like this. I might actually your book started a trend.
Yes. Well, thankfully none of them have illegal substances.
Yeah. That I'm saying on libraries
that we're aware of. If Rebecca starts getting a little too excited about the chat, then we'll know something's up.
I start petting Erin with my gnome hat.
Please don't. I'm a little afraid of the gnome hat.
Well, if you guys who are watching have any questions, please tweet them. Use the hashtag Wattpad4, and we can ask Aprilynne your questions.
Yeah, we're keeping an eye on Twitter. So I don't know, I can't really navigate away from the chat to see the comments in the side box. Leah, you might be able to do that, but you're already watching Twitter. So if you are on Twitter with us, just hashtag Wattpad4, and we'll answer or pass on your questions to Aprilynne. Leah, anyone else have any extra questions? I'm going to save the very last one to the end for when we're wrapping up.
I'm looking. It's mostly like comments.
And costumes. Yeah, Aprilynne, I don't know if you are looking at like on your phone or anything, but if you go to Twitter, you can see some of the costumes. We got some really good ones on here.
Tammy said that Aprilynne's story about the agents and being rejected and all that is hopeful, makes her hopeful. That's a comment though, not a question.
That's okay.
I always tell people everyone gets rejections. Like people whose books you love have gotten so many rejections. I was at a party in New York during BEA, I think the year that Wings came out, and Shannon Hale was the keynote speaker. And, you know, she's like a Newbery honor winner, and she's got all these books, and she writes the Black Princess in Black series now. She's amazing. And she stands up there, and she has this little roll on the podium, and she lets it go, and it just rolls down the aisle, and it is all of her rejections. And, of course, back in the day, we actually got paper rejections, which nobody does anymore. But I'm just like, I'm watching all of these rejections go out for this super, super celebrated, best-selling, multi-awarded author of people that were like, yeah, not my thing.
Wow, that's crazy. It's the same with reviews too. Some of my very, very favorite authors and books have some really negative reviews and stuff I really don't agree with because I love these books. And so actually that kind of leads into another question. Do you look at your reviews, or is it something as an author that you would just kind of stay away from?
I avoid mostly. Like if I get tweeted a review, which I really encourage because I like to be able to share them with my followers, I will basically skim them and just make sure I'm not retweeting this book was awful, I hated it, it sucked, because, it's my Twitter feed and I get to not put that on there. But generally, people will tweet me, even if they're lukewarm reviews, I'm like, I still want to pass that on. So as long as it's not, calling for pitchforks and my imminent death, I'll generally pass it on. But reading is so subjective, and particularly for a book like Glitter, I knew that it was going to be a people are going to love it or hate it book. And the reviews have showed that. I mean, people who love it really love it, and people who hate it are like, why? So, those are things that I want to pass on. But the thing about reviews is that I can't change anything about my book now, so they're not helpful to me as an author. I think they are helpful to readers who want to know kind of what they're getting into, particularly if you have certain tastes or certain things that you want to avoid or certain things you're looking for. They're great for readers, but reviews really are not for the author, so I mostly avoid them, just because it can just kind of ruin your day. But reading is so subjective. I mean, there are books that my friends will just like rant and rave about how amazing they are. And I'll open them up and be like, I just don't get it, So we all have those books we love and those books that we just don't. And that's okay.
We have a couple Twitter questions. Lost Girl wants to know, did your degree in creative writing help you?
I feel like it did, just because I did a lot of writing in college, and not just writing like papers. I wrote fiction in college, and so I got used to writing within a story structure, with the rising action and the climax and the denouement and all of that. And I really spent a lot of time working on sentence structure. By the time I graduated, I hadn't written a novel. You just don't have enough time to write a novel in a semester-long class, but I really felt confident that I knew how to work with a sentence and a paragraph, and that I really knew structure and how to vary my structure, how to use grammar rules and that sort of thing. So when I'm writing, I feel like, at least on the first draft, I mean, when you go back and polish, it's different, but at least on the first draft, I don't have to sit and focus on sentence by sentence, am I even making sense? I can just let the story get out of me, and my brain already knows how to make decent sentences. So I found it really helpful. But that being said, I think you can get the same kind of experience from taking a few writing classes, maybe from a community college, or just taking a couple of classes while you're getting a different kind of degree. So you don't have to get a creative writing degree in order to be an author. But I think it's really good to take some good composition and creative writing classes so you feel really comfortable with the tools of writing a novel.
Okay. Fangirl also wants to know, are you going on a book tour?
I went on a small book tour this year that I just got back from. I went up to the Provo City Library, which is the place that I want to live in. It's this gorgeous, gorgeous building, and I want to buy it and live in it, and they're never going to sell it to me. But I want to. It's my future house. You know how in The King and in Cool Runnings, the guy like wants to live in the castle, the Buckingham Palace. The Provo City Library is my Buckingham Palace, and I want to live there. So I got to do an event there, which was fun, and then I did an event up in Idaho Falls, and I just got back on Saturday. However, I do have a couple of events that I'm doing in the next few months. I will be down in Tucson at the end of November. I'm going to Y'all Fest in 2 weeks, which is in Charleston.
Nice.
And I imagine I will do some events throughout, but I'm not like doing a big nationwide tour.
Mm-hmm. I have a question. Reading Glitter, was so blown away by the world building. You must have to do a lot of research for that, of the palaces and such. So tell us about how you went about that.
Google is my best friend. Yeah. I did a lot of research on the about 250 years that the palace was the political center of France. It was a hunting lodge when Louis XIV decided that he wanted to build it up and basically make the court come out of Paris and come to him. He wanted to prove that he was the king and he was in charge by making people do what he said. And it worked really well, actually. And so a lot of the rituals in the palace were specifically made for the courtiers to dance on the king's puppet strings. That was the whole point. So he did most of the building of the palace. It was actually a swamp when they started out. It was a hunting lodge in a swamp, and they had to drain it, and there were problems with like mosquitoes and malaria and stuff, and people just died because they got sick from the swampy air. So that was a huge problem for like the first 10 years that they were trying to build the palace. And then it went on, and it was the center of political France for over 100 years after that, ending with the most famous occupant, which is Marie Antoinette, who lived there and ruled there until she lost her head. And after that, it never really did house a royal family and be the center of the politics again. Napoleon did live in the Grand Trianon, which is one of the buildings in the complex of the Palace of Versailles. He lived there for a while, but it never really returned to its heyday. Like it did when the 3 King Louis lived there and ruled there and continued to build on to it. So lots and lots of research into that history. A lot of research into the fashion and the architecture. The Baroque era is really, really fabulous. I mean, everything is gilded, everything is shiny, everything is as fancy as humanly possible. So lots and lots of fashion research. As well as the basic history, and then research into France now, more minimal because we don't go into France a lot in the books, but some research into France now. So yeah, a lot of research into the history so that I could play with it and throw it into the future.
So we saw your Pinterest board. That was something that you shared with us earlier, which was very cool, seeing all the elaborate dresses and the headdresses and the hairstyles. What is your kind of favorite methods of research? Like obviously Pinterest is one of them. Did you watch movies from that era, or what was sort of your favorite go-to?
Some movies, a lot of documentaries on YouTube, usually by BBC. BBC is just freaking amazing. But lots of documentaries, a lot of actual footage from the palace. I didn't discover this until a few months ago, but the show Versailles was really interesting to watch because I know a lot of the history, and I was like, artistic license was way taken there, or whatever. But visually, that particular show is so well done. And I'm like, oh, that's exactly like what I want people to picture in their minds when they're imagining the world of glitter, except that Justin is about 8 inches taller than the guy who plays the king.
So that's interesting that you pronounce it Versailles. Is that what I heard you say? Yeah.
Versailles. Yeah.
Okay, because it's like not at all spelled that way. So I was like,
not.
I'm like, I'm gonna avoid pronouncing it so I don't totally butcher the
Well, now
pronouncing.
you know.
Yes.
Any plans on visiting the castle?
Oh, I want to so much. And now that it's a book, it totally is something I could write off on my taxes. And actually, author Plum, who wrote the Die For Me series, is like, come stay at my apartment. I will take you there for the day. And so I actually asked her a lot of questions as I was writing Glitter. And she was at a retreat with me when I was first drafting it. And so she's been really helpful when I needed questions answered, particularly about things like the catacombs, which I haven't been to. But oh, I want to go visit so bad. The closest I've gotten is the airport in Paris on a layover when I was going to Bologna in Italy.
Probably not quite as glamorous.
Not quite, although it is pretty cool looking. It looks like this kind of bright bubble thing with yellow. It's a cool looking airport.
There's more Twitter questions. So how do you keep writing a story when you don't have inspiration or you're running out of ideas?
I don't know that my answers are very helpful for this because the idea of running out of ideas is really kind of odd to me. But I think it's because I've been thinking up crazy ideas literally for as long as I can remember. When I was little, my family used to call me the Queen of La La Land because I was constantly off in my own world, coming up with weird things. So I'm also a planner. So before I write, I know what's basically going to happen. I have had times where I chased an idea that ended up being a stupid idea, and then you have to delete a lot of words and go back. But the concept of just not being able to think of something to write is just not something I run across. There are times when I know what I want to write and I don't know how to write it in the right way to evoke the feeling that I want in the scene. And that's what I run up against way more often than not knowing what to write. And often in that case, the answer, as contrary as it feels, is to get up and walk away and work on something else. And for me, I often will find something to watch or to listen to. I'm a big music person that feels the way that I want the scene to feel. And then I try not to think about it too much and let my brain kind of relax. Because science actually says that if you are continually working on a problem, your brain will actually work less effectively. Like if you're trying to remember someone's name and you're like, oh, shoot. And then an hour later, when you're not thinking about that person at all, you're like, oh, Joey, his name was Joey. It's because your brain relaxes and it actually will work better. So walking away, a lot of authors swear by water, like swimming or hot baths or showers. I used to always say that I get my best ideas in the shower because I often do. Warm showers are good for me. So, something that relaxes you will actually help you move forward when you're feeling really frustratedly stuck.
That's so funny when you said water. I thought you meant like just sit down and have a glass of water. If you're not there. I was like,
Pour water on your head.
This whole time, you never knew it was that easy, Erin.
That would be why I never heard of that before. I have heard of best ideas in this.
Okay, Shay Taylor wants to know, what type of books do you love to read and write?
I go through phases. At this point, I really do almost exclusively write YA. Glitter almost went kind of new adulty. We consider doing it crossover adult and YA because it is quite dark and kind of older. It could easily have gone with a 21-year-old Danica, but we decided to pull it all the way into teen. But as far as reading goes, I read all across the map. I had a year where my brain was tired and I binge read Regency romance just straight because I just needed stories where two people kissed and got married, and that was just what I needed. And there are a lot of really, really wonderful Regency romance authors who they're on my auto buy. But I literally spent about a year just reading Regency romance because that was what my brain needed. And so I'm back to reading a lot of things. I am starting to really pick up a couple of psychological thrillers where there's action and there's like murder and stuff, but really kind of the point is to really delve into the psyche of all of the characters. I've discovered Lisa Unger, and she's one of my newest favorites. I was reading a book actually by David Baldacci, and I will confess to not finishing it, but I was kind of bored at the beginning, and then about 3 chapters in, he introduced a 14-year-old girl, and I was like, ooh, now it's interesting. So then I was like, oh, I'm such a YA author. You introduce a teenage girl, and I'm interested again. So a lot of YA and thrillers and some mystery thrown in there these days. When I was writing Glitter, I was reading a whole bunch of historical.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Sorry, Erin. Speaking of Glitter, someone's asking if you have a working title for book 2.
I'm not sure I'm allowed to share it. I have a title that I just like sent it in with, and nobody has said that we're not going to use it, but conversely, no one has said that we are going to use it. So I don't know if I'm allowed to tell you yet.
Okay, lips sealed.
But it's cool.
We were also wondering, there's the whole, there's a couple of big plot twists in Glitter. I will not give away anything, no spoilers, but one concerning the bad guy and one concerning the love interest. And that's something I was wondering as I was reading is, how do you think of these twists? Do you go from already knowing it and go backwards, or do you just kind of, it just comes to you?
Trying to decide exactly which twist with the bad guy. The twist with the good guy was always there. I really had fun swapping some traditional gender roles in this book. Generally, when you have an anti-heroine or when you have an anti-hero, it's going to be a guy, because we as society let anti-heroes get away with a lot more than anti-heroines. And so there was kind of that challenge there. It was really interesting because as we went through revisions, I continually had to kind of soften the choices that Danica made so that she was still even remotely likable. And I had to keep making Justin worse so people didn't think he was part of a love triangle. And I was like, no, it's not a love triangle. He's a bad dude.
That was my fear at first. I'm like, no, I hate Justin. She cannot.
We were trying to make it very clear.
We were messaging each other back and forth as we read your book. And she's going, oh no, oh no, oh no. I really hope this guy's not the love interest. He's awful. And I was like a little further along.
Fabulous for the first half. You don't know who the love interest is.
Oh, and I'm going, it's making me angry, Reed. I'm like, oh, she better not.
And no, I think you did a really good job of like taking it from chapter 1 and making it obvious, like gradually, that Danica is having none of it, and she's not at all interested in him, even if he is, you know, thinks he's good looking. She's like, no, I know you are awful. So.
Yeah, he is charismatic and good looking. I mean, he uses that, you know, he's like, hey, I got it, I'm going to use it, you know? But I had a lot of fun with my love interest because he's my dude in distress. Instead of the damsel in distress, we have the dude in distress. And he is just in a position where he really can't do a lot for himself. And so I had a lot of fun with that. So I have my anti-heroine and my dude in distress and my hot bad guy.
So do you have a lot of readers like shipping them with the bad guy? Is this something that is like, because it was never something that I thought of. Like, I just didn't want them together at all.
A couple of early beta readers. So before I did at least second round of edits. So before I had really, the last big round of edits that I did on Glitter, I really amped the bad up on the king. So it was pre that.
Okay.
I had to make him worse.
Right. Well,
so I haven't seen it shipping since it came out for those two. So
good. You never know who will ship what, though. There's been other series that people shipped really nasty people with the main character.
Oh, you never know.
I don't understand. Leah, do we have any more?
We do. Leah, great name, Leah Bauer, wants to know what is the best piece of writing advice you've ever received? That's a great question.
Oh, gosh. Best piece. Probably that I can do it better the second time. We all have like incidents where we lose chunks of our writing. I had an ancient laptop when I was a brand new writer, and I was doing edits on Wings, and like I hadn't actually gotten paid yet, so I still had my old dinosaur computer that was, gasping for breath every hour or so, and its battery didn't work. But because it was a laptop, it had the little plug-in that's meant to pull out pretty easily so you can take it. And this like 6-year-old girl at my mother's house went running down the hallway and tripped over my cord and pulled my cord out, and my computer died, and I had just edited a big scene. And I was like, I do this thing. And my sister says to the little girl, I think you should go. And I was like, it's okay. I'm not going to blow up. But I don't remember who it was that told me, just trust yourself to do it better the second time. So if you lose a chunk, just trust yourself to be able to write it better the next time, and kind of look at it as an opportunity to do better. But if you think that, then it's so much easier to delete parts that you don't need. It's like, if I decide I need this again later, I can rewrite it and it will be better the second time. And so that has just really helped me to not be precious about my words, which is a really hard place to get to as a writer, because you're like, my precious words. And so that advice has helped me to be less precious about my words.
Awesome. Belinda wants to know, which author or authors inspired you to start writing books of your own?
I was actually in a writer's group with Stephanie Meyer about 2 months before Twilight got published. Wow. And so I met her, and I felt like we were very much in the same stage of life. We were both young mothers with young kids who just needed something else to do. We loved our kids, but we needed more in our lives. And I just thought, okay, well, she's in the same position of life that I'm in, and she finished a book and she published a book, so I can do that too. And that sounds really funny now, knowing, how big she got and how famous she got. It's like, well, she did it, I can do it. But I mean, the point was she could finish a book, and she had all of the same excuses that I did. And so I needed to stop using my excuses and finish a book. And that was what really prompted me to finish my first book. And actually, someone else who I frequently think of when I'm drafting is James Dashner, who wrote The Maze Runner, who I also met before Maze Runner came out. But we were talking one day about writing, and he gave me some advice about my chapter endings that I now think of every time I end a chapter. And I have editors comment on it all the time, and I'm like, yeah, I learned that from Mr. Dashner.
Is it just leaving it with a cliffhanger, or what does he?
Not a cliffhanger so much as he said, the last sentence of your chapter should be an invitation to your readers to read the next chapter. And I thought that was really, really well put. And that's what I always think. I want it to not only be kind of cliffhangery, but an invitation to flip the page.
That's very cool. Yeah. That's going down in my memory bank too.
Writing notes.
Yeah. Quick take notes. Any more questions on Twitter over there?
If I don't see any. I don't think I've missed any.
Okay, we've got some great costumes. Like I said, if you are just tuning in now, this is a costume party. So tweet us your costume pictures at hashtag Wattpad4 over on Twitter. Same with if you have any comments. If you're trying to comment on YouTube, we might not catch it, but definitely tweet at either Aprilynne Pike on Twitter or under the hashtag Wattpad4. So I actually had a question as well about some of the illicit substances in the book, and what was your inspiration for that, and how did you research that? Did you do any like drug dealing research?
Not quite. The actual drug went through a couple of different incarnations before I settled on what it is, which is a made-up drug, but it is a combination of opioids, which is what goes into heroin, and belladonna, and it is mixed up with microdosing bits of metal, which is why it's glittery, that will make tiny perforations in your skin so that it can be absorbed transdermally. These are things that I think about. But originally what I had was opium tea, which is actually a thing. And I discovered that there are like big drug forums that will, the people there will share their experiences so that you can make the most of your experience. And I've learned the acronym SWIM, which means someone who isn't me, which means it's me, but I'm doing plausible deniability. So they'll be like, someone who isn't me did this with cocaine the other night and recommends this and this and this too.
Oh, so it's like asking for a friend.
Yes. So with opium tea, you can get high off of it, but it will upset your stomach, and there are certain things that you can eat before you have it to enhance your high but keep you from getting like sick. And it ended up being so complicated for Danica to be able to do that without people realizing what was happening that I finally was like, this isn't going to work. But before I discarded that idea, I learned a lot about opium tea and how to talk about yourself and drugs on the internet.
It must have led you to corners of the internet you never thought you would end up on.
Never thought I would end up in. But yeah, there are people out there who drink opium tea.
Interesting.
Get high. Do it with tongues.
I thought of it as like something that is like stayed in the 19th century, like in those opium slum dens, and I don't know, like not these.
I think there's like tourists
travel the same stuff.
Huh. Crazy.
Okay, another Twitter question. What was the toughest chapter you have ever had to write in a book?
It's a chapter that didn't make it into the book, and it is the only chapter that I have. Well, it's the only chapter that I've ever actually cried when I was reading it out loud to my husband. So I read chapters out loud to make sure I catch all of my typos. And this one was in Destined, and it's when it is from this character's point of view, and it ends with his death. And we ended up cutting it because it's the only point in the whole series where you have a chapter from his point of view. And so we cut the actual chapter, but the content that was in it got relayed via a phone call. And so we made it work and put it from Tammany's point of view instead. But we got to the end, and the moment of, and I like totally start to cry because this amazing character just totally sacrificed himself to save the world. And it was wonderful, but it was weird being from his point of view, according to my editor. So that was the toughest chapter to write, and it ended up getting cut.
I feel like you should share that as bonus material for your readers.
It's on my website.
Okay.
It's for Destined.
Someone
I don't want to say names because I don't want to be spoilery, but it is there. If you've read Destined, you can go read that chapter. The events that happen in it are in the book, but the actual point of view chapter is there.
Nice. So you've had considerable success with all of your books, and was there a point where you sort of realized, oh my God, this is happening? Like, or for example, like when you hit the New York Times bestseller, or before that?
I knew from some other, being told things and like size of my print run and stuff, that I was expected, that my publisher had high expectations. The problem with expectations from your publisher is that they very much exist, but you don't have any control over them. So I knew that there were high expectations. I knew that I didn't really have control over those expectations, and it was actually really stressful. And so when the call came in the first week that Wings had hit number 4 on the New York Times list, I was actually relieved because I was like, okay, my publisher is going to be happy with me. I haven't let my publisher down in ways that I can't control because we're authors and we're irrational like that. But then the next week when it hit number 1, that was just something that hadn't even entered, like, that wasn't even a pipe dream of mine. Debuts in that day, they just didn't come out and hit number 1. That was not something that happened. And so when I got the call, I literally like yelled at, they're like, you hit #1. And I yell on the phone. I go, what? My husband comes running in. He's like, what's wrong? And I'm on the phone and he's like, just tell me what number, you know, and he's mouthing to me. And I go like this. And it looks like the wait a minute sign. And he's like, what number? And I stick my finger in his face. And I'm like, and then I wouldn't let him tell anyone. Because then my stupid irrational brain kicked in and was like, this is all a practical joke. And if you tell anyone, the more people you tell, the more people will laugh at you when the world goes, psych, you know? And so I made my husband call my mother and tell her. I was like, if you have to, you can tell her, but I'm not going to tell her. So writers are weird. And I did not believe it until, like, for sure, until I saw it on the New York Times website. Because if someone literally hacked the New York Times website to prank me, then they deserved to be believed. So, I mean, that's a label that I get to keep forever. I haven't had any of my books do as well since. But I get to keep that label forever anyway. You know, I've had some books sell well and some books sell not as well. And so it's nice to have something in your history that you can kind of put beside your name and be like, I was super awesome that one day. And so I like having that.
So do we have time for one more Twitter question?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. What's the hardest thing when writing the ending of a book or series?
Making it feel as epic as it is in my head. All of the endings of my book are always super epic in my head, and making them as epic on the page is, I think, a challenge. I think most writers have a really, really big imagination, and so to take this huge thing that's in your imagination and show the readers accurately how big it is really hard. And I do tend to write and rewrite my endings probably 3 or 4 times before I'm satisfied with them. And then the ending of a series is like however many books you have in that series, that's how many times harder it is to get that series ending as big and as epic as you wanted.
Well, there must be a lot of pressure, especially if your series has become really big, like Wings hitting #1. Was there then a huge amount of pressure to end things the way that you think that readers expected you to?
I really think there was. One of the advantages of being a planner is that I always knew how the series was going to end. And so as I was writing, I tried to massage things in the right direction so that more people would be happy with the ending. And I think that a lot of the pressure to have a really great ending is more internal than external. I think that my publisher just kind of was like, well, yeah, she writes books. She writes good books. We trust her to have a good ending. But I really put more pressure on myself to have a really good ending. I did, like for the ending of Wings, for the very last chapter of Wings, I did kind of fight with my editor over that. She wanted me to cut the last chapter. And I was like, no, I have had this chapter from the beginning. I really, really, really want it. And we actually had crap, I always hate this word. I can never come up with this word. Where you meet in the middle. You each give some.
Compromise.
Compromise.
Yeah. Compromise. That is the word. I can never come up with that word on the first time. I always want to come up with cooperate. Our compromise was that I put an author's note between the last chapter and the epilogue. That last chapter, every review I've ever had talks about it. So I was right.
Have you pointed that out to your editor in a smug email at any point, or no?
No, I have not. I think she knows.
Just wrapping up, we've almost come up to an hour now. Thank you very much for agreeing to come on. It's been great. Yeah, thank you. And we're just wondering, what can readers expect to see from you next, and what are you excited about in the future for projects?
Well, obviously the sequel is coming out next year, and I'm just finishing up second round edits on that. So just the little things working on it now. I have a project that I'm working on, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, that I'm writing in bits and pieces. It's a really difficult project because it has 8 main characters, like 8 point of view characters, and it's got a cast of probably 25, 30 named characters, but like there are 8 point of view characters, and there's no way to do it with fewer. There's no way to do it with fewer. And so it feels like wrestling an octopus. I've literally got 100 pages of bits and pieces here and there that I think are all in the first book. And I have the plot planned out. I know what's going to happen, but there are so many main characters that I'm still getting to know them in all of these little bits and pieces. And so hopefully that's the next thing that readers can expect from me, but it's not under contract or anything yet. And I have to wrestle it quite a bit more before it's even in a format that can go to be reviewed to be under contract. So hopefully it gets to that point sometime in maybe the next 6 months.
Can we have a hint? Is it fantasy? Is it sci-fi?
It is fantasy. It is high fantasy. And what I will tell you is it's got an interesting, somewhat passive magic system and a malevolent god. Ooh. So a god that's trying to kill you.
Ooh. Okay, we like that.
I'm really excited about that.
Got the villains going strong these days.
Yeah, we like the villains a lot, actually. And I like that you had 2 villains in Glitter. So, well, kind of
more even. Yeah, more actually. Yeah. There's a handful of
fun writing Justin. Seriously, I'm like, what's the worst thing he can say right now? I'm gonna have him say that.
How he started out and how the mother ended up blackmailing him. I was like, oh wow, he's a nasty guy. That guy.
He is
very evil villain. Yes. So
and he gets nastier in the second book, but so does she.
This is good. I kind of want to see her just like, I don't know, get completely crazy.
Unleashes a little. She unleashes a little.
I like her crazy though. I really like the complete total self-destruction. I like anti-heroes though. I'm an anti-hero fan.
It's been fun to write. It's been very different. I feel like there are no expectations to have my main character make the hard choice for the better good, because she's not going to.
But it's kind of refreshing to see, particularly in YA, because I don't feel like we get as many anti-hero, particularly like you were saying, female anti-heroes, as I would like. Oops. Oh, I thought you froze for a sec. Okay, so yeah, we're coming up on an hour here. Just, is there anything that anyone else wants to ask, or anything that you want to add, Aprilynne, to wrap us up?
Oh, I'm just looking through all the costumes.
There's some great ones.
Oh yeah, do we want to pick one now, or do you want to tweet one out later?
Yeah, it's totally up to you if you want to pick one now, or you want to go on Twitter afterwards and tweet it under the hashtag. Because I don't know a huge amount to look through or not. If you're there.
Yeah, why don't I tweet it out later?
Okay, perfect.
And make sure I catch them all.
Okay, great idea. I think we said that we would do 1 main winner and then 2 runners-up. Because the runners-up, we can do little Wattpad stickers. And I know we have some Wattpad4 pins to hand out as well for the runners-up. So, yeah. So once again, yeah, we just want to thank you so much for coming on our live broadcast. This is kind of a first for us. So thank you for bearing with us and being.
Yeah, it was super fun.
Yeah, so this is our first Wattpad4 live broadcast. So you are the first.
I think it went great.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone who commented. And you guys all look great in your costumes. And thanks for tuning in and asking all those great questions and for keeping the chat rolling. It's been really fun. So don't forget to tune in next week. Not same place, same time over on the Wattpad4 chat. Okay. So bye, everyone.
Bye.